Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Gaia Sanctorum. Okay, an unpopular opinion to start us off. Your emotions are not the problem. I know. Somewhere along the line, you were told you're too sensitive, overreactive, or my personal favorite, you just need to regulate your nervous system. And look, I'm not saying that nervous system regulation isn't important. Absolutely is. But here's what's missing from that conversation. If emotions were something you could simply breath work your way out of, or journal away, or positive affirmation into submission, don't you think that we would have done that by now? I mean, you're smart. You've tried all the things. You've done the meditations. You've read the self help books, maybe even gone to therapy. And yet, anxiety still shows up. The mood swings still happen. And the physical symptoms that seem emotional are still very real. So, what's actually going on? Today, we're talking about the emotional body, not emotions as vibes that you need to choose differently, and not emotions as mindset problem, but emotions as a functional body that interacts with your tissues, your organs, hormones, nervous system, your astrological chart, herbal allies, and those long-standing symptoms you can't seem to shake. And yes, this is a part of my five bodies framework because nothing about healing exists in isolation, especially not our feelings. So, if you've ever been told to just calm down, or that your symptoms are all in your head, or that you're being too emotional, this one is for you. So, let's dive in. All right. Quick recap for anyone new here and a refresh for those of you who are following along with the series. The Five Bodies Framework looks at you as a whole person across 5 different interconnected dimensions. The first is going to be your physical body, and that's your tissues, your organs, your systems, the meat suit doing the heavy lifting. The mental body is your thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, the stories that you tell yourself. The emotional body is your stored feeling states, emotional patterning, how those emotions live in your tissues. And that's what we're covering today. The energetic body, which is your vitality, your constitutional patterns, boundaries, those subtle things that tend to rule our lives. And then the spiritual body, which is our meaning, our life's purpose, our soul narrative. Why are you even here doing this whole incarnation thing? Now, here's the key thing that most healing models completely miss. Emotions aren't generated in a vacuum. They are shaped by your tissues. They're influenced by your constitution. They're filtered through your mental body. They're amplified or dampened by how much energy you have available. And they're often tied to much deeper soul level themes that are playing out across lifetimes. So when someone says this is just emotional, what they usually mean is we don't know how to talk about this in a way that's actually useful. Because the truth, there's no such thing as just emotional. Your emotions are biochemical. They're your hormones, your neurotransmitters, your inflammatory markers. They are neurological, your nervous system state, your brain patterns. They are structural, muscle tension, fascia, the way we carry ourselves, the way we hold ourselves. They're energetic, stuck chi, blocked chakras, whatever language you want to, you want to choose. It's the same thing. And yes, it's also archetypal. So there's planetary patterns and soul themes. And these relate directly to the spiritual body. So we're not doing reductive one-dimensional healing here. We're going full spectrum because that's what actually works. And if this feels like a lot, don't worry. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear framework for understanding your emotional body and what it actually needs. So let's keep going. So what is the emotional body? The simplest way that I can put it is the emotional body is where lived experience gets stored. It's not remembered. It's not processed through and released. It's stored. And I'm talking about emotions that you weren't allowed to express as a child. I'm talking about emotions that overwhelmed your system at the time that they happen. Emotions that you learned to suppress in order to survive. Family, relationships, jobs. Emotions that literally had no safe place to go. And here's the thing. Once an emotion is stored long term in your tissues, it doesn't just hang out politely in the background. It influences muscle tone. Ever notice chronic neck and shoulder tension? Yeah, that's not just physical. It affects our organ function, your gut, your heart, your liver. All of these are affected by your emotional states. It affects hormone signaling, cortisol, adrenaline, insulin, and sex hormones all shift based on chronic emotional patterns. Inflammation is not just diet and lifestyle. It is deeply tied to our emotional body. And yes, your personality. The you that you think you are is partly a constellation of stored emotional responses. So no, you're not just anxious for no reason. Your body has learned anxiety as a protective strategy because at some point, hypervigilance kept you safe. And now it's a pattern your nervous system defaults to, even when the original threat is long gone. Or maybe you shut down emotionally. You feel numb and disconnected, like you're watching your life from behind glass. That's not a character flaw. That's your nervous system going into a freeze response and never coming fully back online. Or maybe you swing between extremes, rage one moment and despair the next. Totally fine an hour later. That's not crazy. That's dysregulation caused by stored emotional charge that has nowhere to go. And this is the emotional body, and it's not separate from your physical body. It's not separate from your mental patterns. It's not separate from your energy or your soul's journey. It's woven through all of it. Now, before we go any further, I want to say this clearly. I'm not blaming you for your emotions. I'm not saying you created your anxiety or your depression or your trauma responses. What I'm saying is that your body is brilliantly intelligent and it has adapted to keep you alive. Those adaptations just might not be serving you anymore. And that is something that we can absolutely work with. I would like to pause here to say a very heartfelt thank you for joining me here. This is a new channel and it helps immensely if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone that you feel might enjoy the content or benefit from it. I really am truly grateful for your support. All right, let's get in here to the root causes. So here's where most people, and honestly, a lot of practitioners get completely stuck. They see a symptom and they treat a symptom, which makes sense on the surface. You have anxiety, so you take anti-anxiety meds. You have mood swings, so you balance your hormones. You have chronic tension, so you get a massage. And look, Those things can absolutely help in the moment. I am not against symptom relief. But if you're only addressing the surface level, you're going to be chasing symptoms forever. Let me give you an example of what I mean. So let's take the symptom of anxiety, right? It's such a common one. So most conventional approaches say you have generalized anxiety disorder. Here's a prescription. But through the 5 bodies framework, we ask the physical body, what's happening in the tissues? Are you mineral depleted? Is your nervous system fried from chronic stress? Are you running on adrenaline and cortisol 24/7? Is there inflammation driving brain fog and emotional reactivity? We ask the mental body, what thought patterns are you running? Are you catastrophizing? Are you stuck in loops of what if? Are you replaying past events or obsessing about the future? In the emotional body, we need to ask what stored emotion is underneath the anxiety. Is it unresolved fear, unexpressed anger that's turned inward, grief that you never were allowed the space to feel, shame about who you are? And then in the energetic body, what's happening with your boundaries? Are you taking on everyone else's emotion? Is your system in constant hypervigilance because you never feel safe? Is your vitality so depleted that you don't have the reserves to actually regulate? And finally, we ask the spiritual body, are you living out of alignment with your soul's truth? Are there karmic patterns playing out here? Is there a soul lesson around safety, trust, or surrender that's surfacing as anxiety in this lifetime? It's the same symptom, but there are 5 completely different dimensions feeding it. And this is exactly why symptom chasing never works for long. You can take all the magnesium in the world, right? Great physical body support. You can do cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a mental body reframe. Take adaptogens for your energetic body nourishment. But if the emotional body still has stored terror from a car accident 10 years ago, or rage from a childhood that was never safe to express, or grief from a loss that you had to be strong through, that emotional charge is still in your system and it will keep generating symptoms until it's addressed. This isn't woo-woo. This is actual physiology. There is robust research on how adverse childhood experiences, which is the ACEs, there's a whole thing you can do on that, create long-term health consequences. So how trauma gets stored in the body and creates chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, digestive issues, how suppressed emotions literally change your gene expression. So when I say emotional body, I'm not talking about feelings you need to think more positively about. I'm talking about stored somatic patterns that need to be worked with intelligently, with the right herbs, the right practices, and the right level of support. Let's keep going and talk about what those patterns actually look like. So this is where it gets really practical, because once you understand tissue states, you start to see exactly how emotions are living in your body. Tissue states are a traditional Western herbalism concept that describes the condition of your tissues, and different emotional patterns correlate with different tissue states. So I'm going to break down the 4 main ones that you need to know. So the first one is hot, excited, and inflamed. So the emotional signature of this is irritability that comes out of nowhere, anxiety with a lot of physical charge, racing heart, you can't sit still, impatience, everything needs to happen now, rage that you might not even be aware that you're carrying. but your jaw clenching and your tight shoulders definitely are. Frustration, resentment, feeling like you're going to snap at any minute. The way this presents in the tissue is inflammation of the skin, the joints, the gut, redness and heat, tension and tightness, overstimulation, can't wind down at night. And so the common symptoms that you see with this tissue state is insomnia, mind racing, can't turn your brain off, anxiety that feels buzzy or wired, inflammatory pain, headaches, muscle tension, joint pain, hormonal flares, especially around your period, heavy flow, painful cramps, PMS rage, digestive heat, acid reflux, loose stools, IBS, diverticulitis, things like that. So what's happening is your sympathetic nervous system is stuck in overdrive. Your body is producing inflammatory cytokines. Your adrenals are pumping out adrenaline and cortisol, and emotionally, there's heat that has nowhere to go. Maybe it's anger you were never allowed to express. Maybe it's years of pushing yourself too hard. Maybe it's unresolved conflict that you're holding in your body because speaking up feels too dangerous. So, what you need is going to be cooling and soothing and releasing herbs that calm inflammation, support the parasympathetic nervous system, and help move the heat out. Next is going to be cold, depressed, and deficient. So the emotional signature is grief that feels like it's pulling you underwater, hopelessness, apathy. What's the point? Numbness, where you just don't feel much of anything anymore. Exhaustion that sleep can't fix. Disconnection from yourself, from others, from people you care about. And this state presents very uniquely in tissue as sluggish or underfunctioning. So, poor circulation, cold hands and feet, pale complexion, low vitality. And some common symptoms are fatigue, not I didn't sleep good, like bone deep, like your soul needs rest, low mood, depression, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, digestive sluggishness, constipation, slow motility, low libido, low motivation. So what's happening here is your system is completely depleted. You've been running on empty for too long, and now your body has essentially said, skirt, we're shutting down non-essential functions to conserve energy. Emotionally, this often shows up after long periods of grief, chronic stress, emotional suppression. You have felt too much for too long, and now your system has gone cold to protect you from feeling anymore. So, what you really need are warming and nourishing and building herbs that are going to restore your vitality, tonify your nervous system, and gently bring your body back online with your feelings. The next state is the tense constricted state. So the emotional signature for this is needing to control everything because letting go feels terrifying. Fear, sometimes specific, but often just a baseline hum of anxiety. Hypervigilance, always scanning for threats. Perfectionism, because mistakes feel dangerous. And rigidity in thinking, in routines, in how you move through the world. So, how this often presents in the tissues is through tight fascia, muscles that won't release, restricted movement, stiffness, clenched jaw, tight neck and shoulders, restricted breathing. You'll notice that you're either holding your breath or that your breathing is extremely shallow. Common symptoms are going to be chronic pain, especially neck, shoulders, lower back, and hips. Tension headaches and migraines. TMJ, grinding your teeth at night. Digestive cramping, that's IBS-C, the spasms, muscle spasms. Feeling like your diaphragm is restricted, like you can't take a deep breath. So what's happening is your nervous system is in a state of chronic bracing. Somewhere along the line, you learned that it's not safe to relax, that it's not safe to let your guard down. So your body's literally holding on to control, to vigilance, to the illusion of safety. And emotionally, this is often rooted in fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being hurt again. Your body responds by tightening, constricting, and holding everything in. What you need is relaxation. You need release. You need to soften. Herbs that ease muscle tension and support the parasympathetic nervous system and help you feel safe enough to let go. And the fourth one is damp and stagnant. So the emotional signature on this is emotional confusion, right? I don't even know what I'm feeling. Indecision, the inability to make choices, heaviness, like everything feels like it's too much effort. There's a lack of clarity about what you want or need. You feel stuck, like you're trying to walk through waist high mud. Now, with this, the tissue presentation is things like congestion, right? Whether it's sinus, digestive, lymphatic, sluggish elimination, fluid retention, puffiness, brain fog. And the common symptoms are bloating, digestive sluggishness, weight that just won't move, brain fog, difficulty thinking clearly, low motivation, procrastination, sinus congestion, phlegm, lung congestion. So what's happening is there is a backlog. Physically, your detox pathways are overwhelmed. Emotionally, there are feelings that you haven't processed, decisions you haven't made, conversations you haven't had. And all of that creates stagnation. Things that should be moving aren't. So what you really need is clearing, moving, drying herbs that support lymphatic drainage, liver detox, and just to help get things flowing again, both physically and emotionally. Now, here's a key insight. Your emotional patterns shape your tissue state over time. So if you've been carrying unexpressed anger for 10 years, your body becomes hot and inflamed. If you've been suppressing grief, your body is going to become cold and depleted. And if you've been living in fear and control, your body becomes tense and constricted. If you've been avoiding decisions and stuffing down your emotions, your body becomes damp and stagnant. The tissue state is a physical manifestation of the emotional pattern. And this is why we can use herbs, because herbs work on tissue states. They cool, they heat, they can warm cold, they can relax tension, they can move stagnation. Which brings us to the herbal piece. But first, I want to talk about astrology for a minute, because this is where it kind of gets interesting. So if you're new to medical astrology or Astro-Herbalism, this might sound a little out there first, but stick with me because this really is where the pieces start to come together. So in Astro-Herbalism, each planet corresponds to specific organs, tissues, emotional patterns. And when you start to understand your chart, or even just the basics of planetary signatures, you can see why they have specific patterns that you have. And like what types of specific supports you need. This isn't personality astrology. Oh, you're a Leo, you must love attention. This is Astro-Herbalism. It's using the planetary correspondences to understand health, constitution, and healing. So I'm going to give you a few key examples to kind of introduce you to this concept. So the moon. The moon rules our emotions, our nervous system, fluids, digestion, the stomach, the breasts, and the womb. Now, when the moon is in balance, the tissue state is damp and fluctuating and cold. The emotional patterns are emotional overwhelm, right? Feeling everything all at once. Mood cycling. First I'm up here, now I'm down here, now I'm in the middle. Things are very changeable. Digestive sensitivity, especially stress related. Anxiety tied to emotional vulnerability. Now, physically, the way this shows up is bloating, digestive upset, fluid retention, breast tenderness, insomnia tied to your emotional processing, feeling drained by other people's emotions. So, what you need in this scenario is nervines that soothe and stabilize, like lemon balm and chamomile. You need boundary work because moon dominated people are often empaths. You need an awareness of the lunar cycle so that you can honor the natural ebb and flow instead of fighting it. Just a note, if you have your moon in a hard aspect to other planets, especially Saturn, Mars, or Pluto, emotional regulation is a core life theme. You're not broken. You just came in with a sensitive moon that needs some extra support. So the next planet is going to be Saturn. So Saturn rules things like boundaries and structure and bones, skin, teeth, fear, depression, chronic conditions. And when your Saturn is imbalanced, you're going to see cold, dry, rigid, and constricted tissue states. So the emotional patterns that reflect this are depression, the heavy, dark kind of depression, existential fear, emotional shutdown and numbness, feeling burdened, responsible, all alone, and chronic tension from trying to hold everything together. So this shows up for us physically as chronic pain, especially the joints and the spine. Skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis, dry skin, bone and teeth issues, slow digestion, constipation, feeling cold all the time. So in this scenario, what you need are warming, nourishing, and building, both in herbs and in food, things like ashwagandha, shatavari, warming root vegetables, Saturn rituals, working with time and patience and building slowly, and softening practices, because Saturn makes you feel rigid, makes you feel too rigid to feel safe. So Saturn transits often bring up deep emotional work around responsibility, boundaries, and what you're carrying that isn't yours. If you are in a Saturn return, which is usually between the ages of 28 and 30 and 58 and 60, or Saturn is transiting a key point in your chart, this emotional work is going to be front and center for you. Coming into mine in a few years, looking forward to it. The next planet would be Mars. It rules anger and assertion and inflammation and blood and muscles and your immune responses and actions, right? So when the tissue state is imbalanced, it's going to present as hot and inflamed and tense. And this shows up as irritability and frustration and rage, whether it's expressed or suppressed, impulsivity, reactivity, inflammation as an emotional expression, feeling like you have to fight all the time, or the opposite, which is totally disconnected from your anger and your passive aggressive. So physically, this shows up as inflammatory conditions. So autoimmunity, skin flares, joint pain, high blood pressure, muscle tension, fevers, infections, your immune system always being on high alert, accidents and injuries, Mars energy without the container. So when you have very strong Mars imbalance, what you need are cooling, calming herbs, things like skullcap, passion flower, and rose. You need healthy outlets for that Mars energy, movement, creative expression, boundaries that don't allow for the word no. Learning to work with your anger instead of suppressing it and then exploding. If Mars is prominent in your chart, Mars rising, Mars conjunct with your personal planets, Aries, Scorpio placements, you need healthy ways to channel that fire. Otherwise, it turns into inflammation, rage, or self-destruction. I speak from experience. The next planet we're going to talk about is Venus. So Venus rules pleasure and connection and nourishment and self-worth, the throat, the kidneys, sugar balance, and relationships. So when your Venus is imbalanced, you're relaxed, but you can become stagnant or damp or depleted if your self-worth is low. So the emotional patterns would be emotional dependency or depending on others for validation, difficulty receiving, never letting yourself have, sugar cravings as emotional soothing, feeling unworthy of pleasure or rest or sweetness, or on the flip side of that, overindulging to fill the emotional void. So physically, how that shows up is blood sugar dysregulation, hypoglycemia, insulin resistance, diabetes, kidney issues, UTIs, throat problems. Venus rules the throat, so unexpressed needs, weight around the hips and thighs, low libido because you're disconnected from pleasure. So what you need to counterbalance this is self-nourishment practices, not just herbs, but training yourself to receive goodness. Nervines that open the heart, like rose or hawthorn or motherwort. Learning to value yourself independent of any kind of external validation. Astrological note, Venus retrograde periods or hard Venus transits often bring up deep work around self-worth, relationships, and what you truly value. If this is active in your chart, the emotional bodywork is about learning to receive. Now, here's the beautiful thing. Once you understand the planetary themes showing up in your chart, you can see that your emotional patterns aren't character flaws. They're archetypal energies playing out through your body and through your life. If you have a strong moon, you're supposed to feel deeply. You're not too sensitive, you're moon dominant. You need nervine support and boundary practices. If you're Saturn heavy, you're supposed to take things seriously and move slowly and feel the weight of responsibility. You're not too intense or too dark. You're Saturn ruled. You need warming, nourishing practices and the permission to lighten up a little bit. If you're Mars forward, you're supposed to have fire. You're not too much or too angry. You're Mars activated. You just need healthy containers for that energy. This is deeply validating work, and it tells you exactly what kind of herbal and lifestyle support you need based on your unique astrological and constitutional signature. So let's talk herbs. So this is where herbs really shine, in my opinion, because herbs speak the same language as tissues and planets. They don't just treat symptoms, they change the terrain of your body so that your emotions can actually move. I'm going to break it down by category. That way, you get the different classes of herbs for different aspects of emotional body work. First one, no surprise, are nervines. Now, nervines are nervous system support, nervous system regulation, right? They're herbs that directly affect the nervous system. They help you feel emotions without being overwhelmed by them. They create capacity for feeling. So, lemon balm, Melissa officinalis, ruled by Venus and the moon, is for cooling and soothing. The energetics of it are cool and dry, and it addresses the emotional patterns of anxiety with a lot of mental buzz, grief that just sits on the chest, feeling emotionally raw or oversensitized, heart palpitations from anxiety, a nervous stomach. So, lemon balm is a gentle nervine that soothes without sedating. So it lifts the spirits while calming the nervous system. It's especially good for people who are hot and inflamed or running on adrenaline. It's also one of the safest nervines. You can use it long term, generally safe during pregnancy, but always talk to a practitioner about that. And with most medications, you should. Now, this is great as a tea, as a glycerite, as an alcohol tincture, or infused into honey. It's great as an electuary. Next would be milky oat, which is a Venus sativa. It is a Venus ruled herb, and it is nourishing and moistening and restorative. The energetics of it are cool and moist. And it addresses the emotional patterns of nervous system depletion, like you've been running on empty, emotional burnout, feeling fried, exhausted, nothing left to give, heightened sensitivity due to that depletion, and post-traumatic nervous system recovery. So milky oats are one of the most nourishing nervines that we have. It doesn't just calm you down in the moment. It restores and rebuilds the nervous system over time. Think of it like deep restorative sleep for your nerves. It's especially important for people who are experiencing chronic stress, chronic pain, or prolonged emotional overwhelm. If you're using a tincture, fresh milky oat is the best, right? When they're new in the spring, when they're in that raw stage. You can do dried oat straw infusion for long-term nourishment. This is a tonic herb, which means that you have to take it for weeks or months, not just in acute moments. You're going to experience the best results with consistent use. Next, my favorite, skullcap. It is a Saturn and Mercury ruled herb. It is cooling and relaxing. The energetics of it are cool and dry, and it is amazing at addressing tension, both physical and mental tension, rumination, circular thinking, that hamster wheel in your head, emotional rigidity, feeling like you're stuck in a pattern, jaw clenching, muscle tension from stress, obsessive thoughts. Skullcap is a very powerful nervine that relaxes both your mind and your body. It is especially good for people who are tense, physically tight, mentally rigid, emotionally wound up. It helps break the loop of repetitive thinking and creates space for new patterns to form. Um, Most common and my favorite is an alcohol tincture of this. I do take it every single night. The tincture is more powerful, but a tea is also good. Those are the best ways that I found to take it. And it's one of those herbs I really enjoy the flavor of. Adaptogens are going to be the next one. So these are going to build emotional resilience and help with your stress response, right? They help you to adapt to stress. They don't sedate or stimulate. They normalize your stress response and help you build long-term resilience. So the first one is Tulsi. It is a Jupiter Sun herb, warming, clearing, uplifting. The energetics of it are warm and dry, and it addresses things like emotional stagnation, feeling like you're stuck or heavy or unmotivated, depression that with a lack of clarity, grief that feels thick and immovable, and spiritual disconnection. Tulsi is a sacred plant in Ayurveda. It helps with mental fog from emotional overwhelm as well. Now, Tulsi clears stagnation, and lifts the spirits. It's both emotionally uplifting, mentally clarifying, and it's especially good for people who are stuck in grief or who feel disconnected from their purpose. In Ayurveda, Tulsi is considered the incarnation of the goddess Lakshmi. It's a plant that helps you reconnect to your sacred self. Most traditional and best preparation would be a tea. It is a morning devotional practice in India. Tincture works well. If you can grow it, you can chew on the fresh leaves, also incredibly powerful. Next would be ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is a Saturn ruled herb. It is warming and nourishing and grounding. And the energetics of it are warm and unctuous, which means it's oily or building. And it addresses the emotional patterns of fear based depletion, chronic anxiety that's exhausted your system, feeling ungrounded, scattered, tethered, insomnia from exhaustion when you're too tired to sleep, and emotional shutdown from prolonged stress. It also helps when you're feeling cold or depleted or running on empty. So, ashwagandha is a deeply nourishing and grounding herb. It rebuilds reserves that have been depleted by chronic stress or trauma. It's especially good for people who are cold and depleted and have been in freeze response. It is also one of the most researched adaptogens with incredibly strong evidence for reducing cortisol, improving your sleeps, and supporting resilience. The traditional Ayurvedic preparation is powdered herb drank in warm milk. You can take it as a tincture or as capsules. Again, this is an herb that is a tonic. It's something that is not designed for acute issues. It's something that you take consistently and it builds up in your system over time. The last category would be alteratives and liver herbs. So these are herbs that are going to help with clearing stored emotional patterns. Alteratives are herbs that support detoxification and alter chronic patterns. In the emotional body, they help clear stored emotional charge that's creating inflammation or stagnation. The best one that I found for this is dandelion. It is a Jupiter Sun ruled herb. It's cooling, clearing, moving, and the energetics of it are cool and dry and bitter. The emotional patterns that it addresses are stagnant anger, resentment, frustration that you're holding on to, emotional congestion, too much, nowhere for it to go, bitterness, the emotional kind and the taste kind, irritability, feeling like you're going to snap, digestive upset from emotional stress. So dandelion root is a liver herb. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is where anger and frustration are stored. So when you support liver detox pathways, you're also creating space for that emotional charge to move out. Dandelion will help you release what's festering. It's bitter, and sometimes so is emotional work. Best preparation I found is a root decoction. I simmer it for about 20 minutes. You could make a root tincture. You can do a leaf tea, which is more diuretic and less liver focused. Another important herb is burdock. So also it's a Saturn Venus herb. It is for cooling and clearing and deep acting. The energetics of it are cool and moist and earthy. And it addresses the emotional patterns of deep, old emotional patterns. That's stuff that's stuck down in there from childhood. Emotional toxicity, bitterness, resentment, shame, feeling stuck in old stories, skin issues tied to emotional stress, like acne, eczema, psoriasis. So burdock root is an incredible deep cleanser. It works on the blood, the lymph, and the liver, all of which are symptoms involved in moving toxins, both physical and emotional, out of the body. It's especially powerful for patterns that have been present for a long time. If you're working with intergenerational trauma, ancestral patterns, or old wounds, burdock can help. A long simmering root decoction or root tincture. You can actually roast the root. The Japanese do this. They roast the root and it's used as a coffee preparation. Burdock root is slow medicine. It works over weeks or months, so you have to be very patient with it. So here's the key understanding. Herbs don't fix emotions. They change the tissue environment so that emotions can move. They create the conditions for you to process what's been stuck. They give your nervous system the support that it needs to feel safe enough to feel. But you still have to do the feeling part. The herbs open the door, but you have to walk through it. And that's where practices come in, which is what we're covering next. So we've talked about a lot of theory. Let's make it a little more practical. I'm going to give you a real world framework for working with your emotional body intelligently. So step one is going to be how to identify your dominant emotional pattern, right? What emotion shows up most frequently or most intensely for you? Is it anxiety, fear, worry, you can't relax? Is it anger, irritability, frustration, and rage? Is it grief, sadness, and loss and heaviness? Is it numbness? You're shut down, you're disconnected, can't or don't want to feel. Overwhelm. Is it too much? Is everything too much? Or shame? Is it feeling fundamentally wrong or broken? You need to name it. You need to get specific. And then once you've done that, it's time for you to assess your tissue state. Look at your physical body. What is the dominant pattern? Is it hot and inflamed? So your redness, heat, inflammation, tension, can't wind down. Is it cold and depleted? Fatigue, cold extremities, low vitality, slow digestion? Are you tense and constricted? Tight muscles, jaw clenching, shallow breathing, chronic pain? Or are you damp and stagnant? Bloating, brain fog, congestion, sluggish elimination? Your emotional pattern and your tissue state will often match. Hot emotion equals hot tissues, cold emotion equals cold tissues. Then you want to take a look at your planetary themes. If you know your chart, great. If you don't, you can get them free online. Do you have a dominant moon? Do you need extra nervous system support or boundary work? Are you Saturn heavy? Do you need warming and nourishing and softening? Or are you Mars activated and you need to cool your jets and find healthy outlets for your fire? This adds another layer of insight into what you're already working. The next step would be to choose herbs and foods that match all three. So you're going to be choosing herbs based on the emotional pattern, the tissue state, and the planetary correspondence if you're using it. So some examples of what that would look like. So for the emotional pattern of anxiety, right? The tissue state is hot and inflamed. The planetary theme is Mars excess. And the herbal protocol would be cooling nervines like lemon balm or skullcap. Cooling alternatives like dandelion and burdock. Anti-inflammatory support with turmeric and rose. But you would not want to use ashwagandha because it's too warming and might actually make the situation worse. Second, let's talk about depression, numbness. So the tissue state is going to be cold and depleted, and the planetary theme would be Saturn dominance. So when you look at the herbal protocol, you're going to want to make sure to choose something that's warming and nourishing. Adaptogens, ashwagandha and tulsi, nervine tonics like milky oat, or circulatory stimulants like rosemary and ginger, heart opening herbs, hawthorn and rose. But you wouldn't want to use skullcap because it's too cooling and could possibly further deplete you. Example number 3 would be the emotional pattern of rage, whether it be suppressed or explosive rage. So the tissue state is hot and inflamed. The planetary theme is going to be Mars inflamed or Mars dominant. And then your herbal protocol is going to be cooling nervines like passion flower and blue vervain, or liver support in the form of dandelion and milk thistle. Heart calming like motherwort and rose. Plus, healthy outlets for anger, such as movement, creative destruction, boundary practices. All of these things are integral. I love the way that this works together because you're not just Googling herbs for anxiety. You're looking at your body's version of anxiety and supporting it specifically. That is precision herbalism. The last step to this is supporting the other 4 bodies simultaneously. Remember that the emotional body does not exist in isolation. So while you're working with herbs for emotional regulation, you also need to nourish your physical body. The nervous system requires B vitamins and magnesium and omega-3s and protein. You want to make sure that your blood sugar is balanced. Don't skip meals or reduce your caffeine. Support your gut, because the gut brain axis is directly related to your emotions. And move your body. Emotions are stored somatically. Movement will help release them. In the mental body, you want to challenge the thought patterns that are possibly amplifying the emotional charge. Notice where you're catastrophizing and where you're ruminating. If necessary, work with a therapist. Herbs support therapy, they do not replace it. In the energetic body, especially if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person, protect your energy. Set boundaries with the people that drain you. Practice grounding. Literally, put your hands or your feet on the ground, in the dirt. And for your spiritual body, reconnect with the things that gives your life meaning. Work with the soul lesson underneath the pattern. Why is this showing up right now? What is it teaching you? And honor the archetypal themes playing out. You're not broken. You're just working with really big energies. Healing happens when all 5 bodies are addressed together, not just herbs, not just therapy, not just mindset, all of it. And step 6, give it time and track your progress. Emotional body work is not a quick fix. These patterns took years to form. They will not resolve in 2 weeks. Give herbs 4 to 6 weeks minimum to see shifts. Give practices 3 months minimum to become integrated. And be gentle with yourself. You're unwinding patterns that have been protective, even if they're not serving you anymore. Track your progress. How's your sleep? How's your mood stability? Are you feeling emotions more clearly? Are your physical symptoms shifting? Are you less reactive? Small shifts matter. You need to notice them. I will leave a link for my emotional tracking sheet below for you to print out and use as you see fit. Some of the most common mistakes that we need to avoid. I want to save you some time and tell you what doesn't work. Mistake number 1, don't use herbs to suppress emotions. Nervines should help you feel safer to feel, not numb you out. If you are using herbs to avoid feeling, you're just doing suppression with plants, and that's not healing. Don't only address one body. Taking herbs for anxiety, but not addressing the depleted physical body, the catastrophic mental body patterns, the weak energetic boundaries, or the soul lesson underneath, you will get some relief, but that's not going to bring transformation. Mistake number 3, comparing somebody else's protocol to yours. My friend takes ashwagandha and feels amazing. Why doesn't it work for me? Because she's cold and depleted and you're hot and inflamed. Different bodies require different herbs. Stop comparing yourself to other people. And mistake number 4 is expecting the herbs to do all the work. They create the conditions for healing, but you still have to be the one to move the emotions. And that might look like crying or talking or moving your body or setting boundaries or getting support. The herbs help, but they don't do it for you. And lastly, giving up too soon. It took 10 years to create the pattern. Give it more than 2 weeks to shift. Patience is part of the medicine. All right, so we're going to bring this home. Your emotions are not malfunctioning. They're not too much. They're not a character flaw. They're not something you need to positive affirmation your way out of. Your emotions are information. They're signals from your body about what it needs, what it's carrying, what's unresolved, what's asking to be felt and released. And when you stop trying to suppress them, when you stop trying to just calm down or get over it or think more positively, when you start working with them intelligently through the five bodies framework with the right herbs, the right practices, and the right understanding of what's actually happening in your system, your symptoms change. Not because you're white knuckling your way through, but because you're actually addressing the root cause. So here's what I want you to take away from this video. Your emotional body is a real functional dimension of your being. It's not woo woo, it's physiology, it's neurology, it's endocrinology, and it's real. Emotional patterns create tissue states, and tissue states can be worked with using herbs, practices, and support. Your astrological signature tells you a lot about your emotional patterns. You're not flawed. You're working within specific planetary energies that have specific needs. Herbs are allies in this work, but they're not magic pills. They create conditions for you to process and release what's stuck. Healing is holistic. You can't just work on the emotional body and ignore the other four. It all works together. And remember, your feelings are not the enemy. They're the map. They're showing you where you need support, where you need healing, and where old patterns are asking to be released so new ones can form. So honor them, work with them, and give yourself the herbal, practical, and spiritual support you need to do this work well. If this resonated with you, hit like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell so that you get notifications, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And check the links below to go deeper into the five bodies framework. I've got the full herb list, the planetary correspondences, and the links to book a personalized five bodies assessment if you want support tailored specifically to your unique pattern. And if you haven't watched the mental body video yet, I highly recommend going back and watching that, because these bodies work together, and understanding your mental body will help you understand your emotional body even more clearly. All right, that's it for today. Your emotions are not broken. You're not broken. You're just ready to heal in a way that actually works. I'm Danielle, and I'll see you in the next one.